what is one leadership choice listeners could make this year to move from intention to inclusion?
That's a great question, because sometimes I think just do it. I think Nike's so successful because that mantra is just so clear. Just do it. I find for myself, my own personality, when I start thinking, I put way more energy into just thinking about it. I just need to do it. And it's okay to fail. It's okay to try. It's okay to fail. But just start doing it.
Welcome to Sustainable Futures with Daniela Bas, where innovation meets impact. Join me every first and the third Saturday at 10 a.m. Central European Time for engaging conversations with visionaries reshaping industries like fashion, tech, tourism, sports, and more through social fairness and sustainability. As a global leader and change maker, I share fresh insights and actionable ideas to inspire meaningful change and drive results. Tune in, subscribe, and help shape a brighter, sustainable future.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, in whichever part of the world you are. Inclusion is often celebrated and leadership is tested. And in my experience, the kind of leadership that truly changes the systems is quieter, longer, and far more demanding. In today's episode, we explore women and leadership through the longer game of inclusion, where sport, employment, and dignity intersect. With us, Jen Allred, and with her, we move beyond symbolic inclusion, and we're going to ask to ourselves, what does it really take to build leadership that lasts? Good morning, Jen. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Jen, we start with our jolly question. I'm really curious to know, Jen, you are a woman in a leadership position. If you suddenly had one full year with no job title, what would you be most curious to learn or to explore?
Gosh, what an interesting question. I am so blessed that I have two children who are pursuing kind of beyond college degrees right now. One is pursuing medical school and one is pursuing law school. And I am recognizing in both of those fields how little I know about the true construct of both of them. So I think I'd like to split my time and spend a little bit learning more about the field of medicine and a little bit learning more about the field of law, because they're both intriguing and daunting. And it would be a wonderful opportunity to just push myself to learn about something I know so little about.
So for those who do not know Jen yet, Jen Allred has spent over 25 years shaping impact from inside Lakeshore Foundation, moving across communication, development, and now leading programs. So Jen has a strong ties with the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic ecosystem in the United States, and she represents a rare form of leadership. Long-term, values-driven, and systemic. Her conviction to me is clear. Employment, participation, and dignity are inseparable. So let us explore what leadership looks like when inclusion is treated as a strategy. I have a question for you then. What brought you to work at Lakeshore Foundation? And then I have another one.
So I was very fortunate that my path here was not so straight. I graduated from a university and went back to my hometown in Maryland to work in government, and then found myself with the opportunity to work at Kennedy Krieger Institute, which is aligned with Johns Hopkins, working with children. And in that role, had various experiences. And when I had the opportunity to move to Alabama, there was a job open at Lakeshore Foundation, which I had never heard of. Mm-hmm. And I came and interviewed, and I so quickly realized that this could be an amazing opportunity, because I had had such great experience working on the medical side of the world, but I recognized that I knew almost nothing about what happened to people when they left the medical environment. And what an amazing chance to think about how people truly live their lives, and not just being in the midst of that very small microcosm of the medical world. So I found my way to Lakeshore and started here as the communications director in 2000. And here I am 25 years later.
Jen, after decades of experience, what leadership practices have you seen work best when women move from being included in decision making to actually reshaping power, priorities, and also governance inside organizations?
I think one of the really wonderful things about Lakeshore is that from the very beginning, our previous CEO and our current CEO, John Kemp, have really truly valued diverse perspective and voices at the table. I never probably recognized how unique that was until I began to speak to other women in other fields who said, well, you just included as an opportunity to have a voice. That no, I'm included all the time. And I never realized how special that was and how unique that was. But that the way Lakeshore is structured, we have a very clear governance structure. It's laid out. It's very transparent of our wonderful board of directors who advise us, our CEO, who's the ultimate decision maker, but that leadership team was a genuine leader.
Thank you for this wonderful picture you gave of how women can really express themselves when the organization allows everyone, without distinctions of gender, to be who they are and to really utilize their talents. You have led across 3 core functions, we said, at Lakeshore over 25 years. What does long-term internal leadership teach us about building credible inclusion strategies beyond, short term when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion trends?
It's taught me a lot of different things. I think one of them is the value of having played a role in different departments. I feel like I can have a very authentic voice, understanding, the colleague that I'm working with, talking about sort of the opportunities and challenges in their particular genre of work here, because likely in one of my 3 departments, I've touched that at some point. So trying to be a very physically and mentally present leader, but I think having a high emotional IQ is really important too, being able to understand and sort of read the room sometimes when things are wonderful or when things are challenging. I think I've also really learned that it's so important to not only hear people, but truly listen to them, because it's different sometimes. I think when people truly soak in someone else's perspective, they learn so much every single time, and we're all so much better for it. I think what's often interesting is that I find great value in that at work, but it makes my own just personal life so much more richer as well.
Jen, can you explain it in a bit more and maybe give us an example about the difference between hearing and listening to someone?
Sure.
As a leader.
Sure. I think there's numerous examples every week, but sometimes we'll have a collective meeting, and the tenor at the table to start is that everyone is coming from a different place. They have their own roles and responsibilities all day long, their own personal lives, their own sort of personal set of knowledge. And when we come to the table, our job is to be respectful, but communicative. And you can tell when someone is waiting to respond versus listening to what someone is saying. And I think we're really lucky here to have a CEO that really coaches us in, don't be so busy thinking about how you're going to respond. Take a minute, listen to how that person is really talking to you about how this affects them. Think about how it really affects you and respond in that way. And that small step of thinking about that makes a huge difference all the time.
So this is another way of talking about inclusion, including the ideas, the feelings, and the suggestions of everyone. Talking about inclusion, you know that Milano Cortina 2026 in Italy is where Olympics and Paralympics are taking place. So this puts inclusion under the global spotlight. as the United States will host the Games in 2028, the same. What should governments and businesses learn from the Paralympic ecosystem now if inclusion is to outlive the Games and reshape the governance?
Sure. So I've been so lucky to have the opportunity to volunteer with the USOPC around communications and serving as a press officer for a variety of sports, most centralized on the ones that we are the home for, wheelchair rugby and now bocce and para-powerlifting. When I think about the Games being hosted in Los Angeles in 2028, there's such an excitement because we have learned so much, particularly from our colleagues in Great Britain, who talk so eloquently about the impact that hosting the Games in London in 2012 made on British society around inclusion. And so many athletes and leaders in Great Britain talk about how that was a pinnacle moment of changing culture there and truly seeing people for people and looking beyond the constructs of gender or disability and respecting incredible athletic performance, deep knowledge sets. And so I believe the United States can and will take advantage of that opportunity in Los Angeles 2028. It can only make our country so much better and stronger. So what an incredible gift to be able to host the world's greatest athletes at the Olympic and Paralympic Games. But what an even greater gift to have our society really be able to be transported so much farther forward than we are today.
So that's what we wish for the Olympics and Paralympics here in Italy, and that's what we're hoping the same in 2028 in the United States, and so on and so forth. Because inclusion really has to outlive the Games, as you said, and reshape governance, as we have seen already happening in 2012. You often, you often link employment to quality of life for persons with disabilities, Jen. And from a leadership perspective, a female leadership perspective as well, what concrete governance choices make that link real rather than rhetorical?
Employment is so important. And it's not only important for quality of life from a financial perspective, but it's so important from a quality of life of a value perspective. Valued as a human is often, if you think of, I often think about how people start out conversations, and after they get to meet you for a moment, they ask you what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And, everyone should have the opportunity to be able to respond to that in a way that they are proud of. And so how do we ensure that people are seen for the talents and abilities they have and not seen for the challenges it probably aren't even going to present itself in getting someone hired? I think so many times people spend time trying to figure out how something won't work rather than figuring out how it will, because it's a lot easier to figure out how to make it work than it is to throw up all the roadblocks for something not to happen. What I hope for in employment is that we continue as a society to recognize, and this is a global society, not just an American construct, but as a society, there are literally millions of people out there who want and are ready to work, who only need the equitable opportunity to do so. And it's really just that simple. They have to perform at the same levels. They have to bring all the same talents to the table, but they just need that chance. It's really, it's like we say sometimes around here, we're like, it's not that deep. All people need is a chance, and then it's theirs to take advantage of.
Yes, that's, what I call the freedom to be able to choose.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if inclusion were a sport, we spoke about sports, what would most organizations still be training badly for?
I think it's just that piece of the why won't it work. I think so many people put so much time into, well, the what if this happens and what if that happens. Stuff is going to happen with everyone. And so, putting that training and excellence into how do we onboard every employee in the best way for them to be the most successful at their job, period. not focus on one small group, but look at it across the board. Are we promoting people for the right reasons or because they're in the right place at the right time? Two totally different questions, but how do we make sure that there's opportunity? And then how do we make sure that that process is transparent so everyone understands what it does take to be successful in their job? I think sometimes too, we train a lot to put things in a book or on a shelf, but how do we train to be transparent so that everyone understands what the game plan is?
So the question would be, what if we make it work?
Mm-hmm.
That's a nice what if. Let's do it. Many organizations that celebrate the Olympics, in my view, overlook the Paralympics. We're not there yet, completely.
Not there yet.
Although there has been a huge improvement and we have to celebrate it.
Absolutely.
But what does that reveal about their real understanding of inclusion of these organizations and also their leadership maturity?
That is a great question. I struggle to answer that sometimes because I think so much of it is exposure. I think it is true that when people have the opportunity to see Paralympic sport, once they stop thinking so hard about it for a few minutes, they just see sport. And for those that love all of the Olympic and Paralympic values and the richness that it brings to society and the stories of athletes and their amazing commitment to success, they will just see the through line of this is 2 more weeks of amazing athletes. It's really just that simple. We had a group here recently at Lakeshore that came to watch wheelchair basketball, and I was so thrilled because, one of their takeaways was, why is it called wheelchair basketball? Because it's just basketball when you start watching it. I'm like, it was an interesting takeaway that as they let themselves just see the sport, that's all they saw. And one of the most powerful opportunities in sport is storytelling. And so I hope that our networks, our sponsors continue to tell that Paralympic sport story, because I think as more and more people see it, they will quickly recognize the value.
And Jen, I hope one day also the Special Olympics will gain the same dignity and recognition. We very seldom talk about the Special Olympics, but they are also amazing when it comes to the athletes playing there. It's fantastic. Let's move now to the second part of our conversation. And we will focus about the past, the present, and the future. Once upon a time, looking back, what early experience taught you that leadership is about dignity and not hierarchy?
Gosh, there's so many moments. One of the things that I think I love about working at Lakeshore is that my office is less than 50 feet away from our programmatic spaces. Mm-hmm. And I have the opportunity to leave my office and go out every day and meet the people that are a part of the foundation, who are our members, our athletes, our supporters, who are in the mix of things. And as my job has evolved here, I've recognized over time that sometimes when a leader enters the room, people will sometimes behave differently. And they will ask you if they should ask about certain things or they should, do certain things. And I think the more you can create a culture of making everyone feel like you are a colleague in the room who's just trying to understand more, because that's the way you're going to be a good leader, if you truly understand it, as opposed to getting a version that's been sort of cleaned up for you to hear about. I think if as leaders in a hierarchy structure, all we hear about are the bookends, the really bad things that people are upset about, and the really great things that they want to celebrate, if we don't hear about all the good chapters in the middle, we can't be good leaders. And so I think continuing to push people to just talk about what are the basic things that really happen all day long? What are the things that don't seem meaningful? Those are sometimes the most meaningful things, because we're taking them for granted, and we have to make sure that they keep happening all the time, or the bookends of the bad and the good become much more present. And so that's the part that I think is most important.
I can see the passion in you when you're talking about. So today, from the female lens, what leadership decision do you see most organizations are postponing?
They postpone succession planning. I think is one that is a really uncomfortable topic. You are planning for someone that is important to the organization not to be there anymore. That's uncomfortable for everyone. And no one, if there's someone like me who's been here for 25 years and I have a, odd set of knowledge over the years and have cobbled things together. And so how do we help people feel empowered by succession planning and knowing that that's a legacy builder, that you should always be planning to make sure that it's not about you, it's about the organization doing really well and maybe even better with someone else, and not making that so uncomfortable. I think that's a huge issue that we are reticent to talk about. I think also acknowledging that, be it a generational difference or a gender difference, we have very different lives and perspectives we bring to the table. And we can't just choose one way to communicate with people or one set of circumstances that we're going to acknowledge in people's personal lives and build policy around. You have to be thoughtful about all of the different things that can and will affect employees, and make sure that those policies are clear and present, and be willing to keep listening to the places you've forgotten. I think that's hard sometimes because you can get defensive about the things that aren't there, but it's okay to realize that there is no perfect person or no perfect policy.
Jen, you touched a very sensitive area here when it comes to leading groups where there are different generations. Someone who is 20 and just started working on experimenting, and someone who has already had plenty of experience, and maybe he's or she is 60 years old. And things have changed and are changing very fast, if not because of technology, for instance. What you said is really key when it comes to including everyone as a good leader. And it's not easy at all.
And it's so important, as you talked about communication, just, there's such basic tools that are viewed typically so differently generationally. A group of colleagues that text about, that is the main way they communicate. There's a group that communicates very formally through email. There's a group that would prefer to have a telephone conversation. And so how do you value all those different things and make sure that it shows up so people feel like, oh, it matters how I want to be communicated to? That's half the battle sometimes.
How do you do it? Give us an example. Come on, I'm sure the listeners are curious.
Well, it's a really small one, but I think about Alabama, where it's never cold, hardly, and never icy. We had bad weather, and so we were going to close the building for the day. And, back 25 years ago, when we were going to close the building, we had a phone tree and we would call people and tell them we were closed. But in today's landscape, we recognize that we have a group of colleagues who want to get a text message about that. We have a group of colleagues that will want to see it on social media. We have a group that's going to want to get a phone call from their supervisor. We have a group that is wanting to want an email. It's 3 additional steps, but so simple to make sure that people feel like, oh, it mattered what I said was important to me to find out something when I'm out of the office. Great. Very simple. And just being responsive to like a really little thing like that can make a big difference.
So people don't feel invisible. Thank you. That's an excellent example. Very simple, but extremely effective. Now, let's move to the future. Imagine you are 20 years old in 2071. Looking back at today's leaders, what would you want, Jen, to thank them for changing when it comes to inclusion and power?
One thing that I've been so fortunate, particularly in the last couple of years in the Olympic and Paralympic space, notably, and here at Lakeshore, is making sure that at the decision-making table, the people who are affected by the decisions are there in an actual role as a decision maker. And here at the foundation, we have a group that governs our Olympic and Paralympic work, and there is a requirement that we have a significant percentage of that group be an athlete voice, but with the specific parameters that they have competed within the last 10 years. What a gift. What a gift to have people right at the table when you're having the conversation that can say, I know this sounds great in the midst of this conversation in a conference room, but let's talk about how it would have really affected me when I was out there competing or getting ready to compete. So rather than sit in a room and come up with a plan and then have to vet it, outside of that room, you can already start doing some of that vetting right there in the decision-making process. It is such a gift. It builds rapport. It builds understanding. It's been so wonderful, and I'm so glad we're meaningfully doing it. I sure hope in 2071 we're doing it even more. But it's really good. And again, really simple. But I love it. It's one of the best things to listen to people talk about.
So in a way, I think the expression in English is putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Well, we're almost at the end of our conversation. I want to ask you a question. What is one leadership choice listeners could make this year to move from intention to inclusion?
Well, that is a great question, because sometimes I think just do it. I think Nike's so successful because that mantra is just so clear. Just do it. I find for myself, my own personality, when I start thinking and thinking and thinking, I put way more energy into just thinking about it. I just need to do it, and it's okay to fail. Just start doing it. I think we all find a significant percentage of the time, it's way easier than we thought it was going to be to just do what we're afraid of and try. And if it doesn't work, to be comfortable saying, I was wrong, it didn't work that way, I need to try a different way. That's okay too. No one is expecting anyone else to be perfect. They're expecting them to try hard. And it's just that simple.
I'm also a certified life coach. And what we usually say is that you haven't failed. You simply change the goal while doing something, because you found out, that maybe what you thought at the beginning was not really the right goal. You started experimenting, but along the way, you simply started changing objective.
Oh, see, I love that. I knew I would get more out of this than I.
Oh, right.
That would be helpful.
So, happy that I'm also sharing something useful besides what I have learned from you today. Well, dear all, inclusion is not a side project. It's a leadership choice. What stays with me from this conversation with Jen Allred is a simple but uncomfortable truth. Inclusion doesn't fail because we don't know what to do. It fails because we delay doing things. And as today's conversation shows, the most powerful leaders are not always the loudest. They are the ones who stay long enough to change the system from within. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was lovely to speak with you.
As I wrap up this episode, my heartfelt gratitude to today's guest and to all of you. Join me for the next episode as we delve deeper with special guests, uncovering thought-provoking insights and actionable steps, paving the way for a brighter, inclusive, sustainable tomorrow. Thanks also to Damian Morton, music, and Maria Cortez Gagliano, social media. Don't miss out next episode on shaping the future we aspire to. Ciao, ciao!